Welcome to Daily Dose. Excited to be back with you. And we're going to take a little pause in our study through Genesis before we get into Genesis 7. And we're going to take a look at Psalm 14, which, as you see on screen, is actually 13 in the Greek numbering. This psalm is used in Romans 3, so that'll offer us a lot of interesting connections to make as we go through. Let's begin here with verse 1. Apen aphron in cardia autou, uk estin theos, dieptheron, ke ebdeliktheson in epitedumasen, uk estin poion krestoteta, uk estin heos henos. A lot of interesting new vocabulary for us in this video. But let's begin with the superscript, which I've put on the screen here, and it reads, Eis tatelos salmos to Dauid. We've seen something like this before. This eis tatelos is a very interesting and somewhat peculiar Greek rendering of the Hebrew, at least as we have in the Masoretic, le menetseach, which is often rendered as a kind of musical term. But if you point to the menetseach a certain way, it could also sound almost eschatological unto the end here. And then the salmos to Dauid, that dative there is interesting because typically you'll see le Dauid, which can also be a multifunctional kind of thing. So this could be either a psalm to David, on his behalf, or it could be a psalm by David. So there is some debate about that. But the Greek rendering here is fairly wooden with what we have in the Masoretic. Let's begin with the first line. Apen, of course, third singular from Lego. The subject here is aphron, which is fool. So a fool said, and then where did he say it? In his heart. So we're getting at the internal ruminations of a foolish person. Uk estin theos, there is no God. Now, in an English translation, we would typically put quotations around this because this is a kind of reported speech, or God does not exist, something like that. Now, the psalmist is going to comment on that. So we have the reported heart speech, if you will, of the foolish person. Now, what does the psalmist say about someone who is like that? First off, we have diepthero. You'll notice with the an ending, you got a past time indicator here. This is a third plural aorist active indicative. This means to ruin or to destroy. In fact, we saw this in Genesis 6 previously. And so notice it's plural. So we're speaking kind of collectively about a foolish person, like all the foolish people who say this are like this. So they destroy things. They leave ruin in their path, so to speak. Next verb, ebdeliktheson, that's from bedeluso. A little bit difficult to pronounce that BD there, but with that theson ending, this is a third plural aorist passive indicative. This means to make abominable or detestable. And so they have become, if you will, detestable in epitedumasen. That's the plural of epiteduma, which is a pursuit or practice. So they are abominable. They're detestable in their way of life, so to speak, in their various pursuits. Now, we have further description of what they're like. So, uk estin poion here. So the poion is going to be a nominative singular masculine present active participle from poieo. So there's no one doing. You might even in your own head think, okay, this is kind of substantival if you put a little article there. There's no one who does or no one doing. Krestoteta, which is goodness or kindness. So this would be like, again, here it's plural, so this would be like acts of kindness or good deeds, if you will. And then uk estin heos, or heos henos, not even unto one. Remember, that's the genitive of the number one, genitive because of the heos there. So there's not even one person who does good things. That is those who in their heart say there is no God. So there's a connection there between theism and proper theism of the Israelites' God and a very disastrous way of life, not only doing bad things, as we see in this verse, but also the absence of doing good things. I'll point out also, and this is true for the next couple verses, that there is a similar form in Psalm 53/52. If you look that up, you'll see there's a lot of parallels here. Not the whole thing, but it's very close. So sometimes you'll have that in the Psalter where there's repetition of some things. Now, let's take a look at Romans 3:12. This won't be our first time in Romans 3. Here, Paul has introduced human sin all the way back in Romans 1:18 and following, and really for 3 whole chapters, he just rubs our face and how bad everyone is. He begins with the broader Hellenistic or Greek world, then he moves to the Jewish world, and he puts us all together. So Romans 3 is this katina, it's this chain of all the bad things about who we are before we get to the solution later in Romans 3. And so it's interesting that he goes to Psalm 14. He says, all have turned aside. We'll come back to that, by the way. Together they become worthless. That's also from Psalm 14. No one does good, not even one. You'll notice uk estin hapoion. There is an article in the Romans form, like I mentioned. You got the Krestatita, uk estin heos henas. And so in Nestle Aland, at least, and some of the other critical editions, this uk estin is not present in all manuscripts, which is why it's bracketed here. This is from the Nestle text. So this little line here, no one does good, not even one, is found in Psalm 14, verse 3. We're going to come back to that in a few videos, so it's a bit even repetitive within itself, but Psalm 14, verse 3 is really interesting in the Greek tradition. We're going to have a whole special video on that. Stay tuned. We're going to come back to it. There's a lot of really fascinating stuff going on. But either way, Paul here is drawing on this psalm, and he's going to do it multiple times to describe the sinfulness of humanity. No one does good, not even one. So we'll pick up in verse 2 and see even more things about this in the next videos. Thanks for tuning in.